Hey everybody, how's it going out there? Well, today is going to get a little bit meta, because today I'm going to bring you some good news. As in, a new sort of furry news website has sort of popped up and has been kind of making its round around the Twitters that a lot of people have been talking about, and that is Good for News. So Good for News is supposed to be it's a site by Haven T. Husky, and they plan on leading that site, and it's another furry nonfiction site. Similar to Flair or Dog Patch Pets, but its coup de grace, so to be, is going to be it'll only talk about good stories, as in feel good, wonderful, awesome stories about good things happening in the fandom, and avoiding any more contentious or political discussions or anything like that. Probably talking about charity events or furries who create art and things like that, interviews with furries, things like that nature. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not this new furry news site on the block will take off and do good for things. But that's a very short episode, right? So I decided to kind of expand a little bit. Um, let's talk about furry news websites and where they exist and where you could find news, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Wah, wah, wah. All right. So we're gonna start and go all the way. Now, the thing about social media in the furry fandom is that there was a lot of early Web 2.0. I mean, like message boards and things like that. Um, and furries would usually congregate on message boards or like user groups and things like that. Um, and that was sort of how they kind of came to be. There wasn't many sites that talked about furry fandom news because the fandom was kind of small. We're kind of getting used to finding one another rather than kind of chronicling issues that happen within the group or anything like that. Um, Flair was found in January of 2001 um, by a small group of individuals. Um, and there was certain users who were very prominent there back then. Um, Back then, Flavor didn't have very long articles; they were kind of very short and more like um, not they weren't like really long form, but they kind of had like little tidbits here and there. Um, it seemed more community esque than like long form journalism or writing down things. But they always had that sort of idea in their back of their head when they were creating it. One of the interesting, I wasn't really even part of the fandom back in 2011. My first entry into it was in 2001, but I was very much a lurker back then. I really didn't become too familiar with Flera until 2010, when Green Reaper took over it, and Green Reaper started pushing for the more long form sort of journalistic styles of articles. Um, and so, like, but the thing is, like, we very much do archive our things, and so like, or we keep, or at least we try to keep an archive of it. So like, it's interesting to go back because like 9/11 was literally happened like a few months after Flera came up to about 9 months, right? So like you could see how furries were reacting to 9/11 in that particular area or in that particular site back then. So that's a very interesting thing. And so like keeping chronicles of furry history, as it were, and how furries are reacting to current events. Even though it didn't have like Flera later became more specialized in like we are covering furry content and animal content and cartoons and things, or animal cartoons and things like that. And like we don't cover normal nonfiction, like things that in social politics, healthcare. Interestingly, handles comments via a karma system. Users either have their ISP or their user profile tied with a star system. If they make comments that are well received, they'll receive 5 stars. If they make poor comments, they'll receive 1 stars that are poorly received. The comment and karma system, what's called the karma system, is heavily debated there still. But to me, I see it as sort of like I see it as like the points and whose line is in any way. If you don't think about it too much and just say whatever you're going to say anyway, and dang the consequences, um, you know, it forces you to think about a better way of saying things that might be more well received. But don't crutch on it. Like, don't think about it too much. Say what you're going to say, and if people receive it well, they do. If they don't, they don't. Stories are also rated that way, and over time, like if you say a lot of bad comments, it becomes easier to kind of like hide like basically see your comments as being bad. Like you're by default, you're going to be at a certain point. So basically, before your comments become pseudo hidden, which basically means like they can still see your name, but they can't see the comment unless they choose to expand it. Like if you make too many bad comments, then that's what's going to happen there. So that's sort of how the moderation there works. And like there's a whole bunch of history on it. Obviously, it's the longest running sort of furry news site. So there's a lot of like topics about that, which we can make a whole video on. But we won't do that because so we're going to kind of go from most known to least known. This first sort of section is going to be on furry news things that are kind of that are more well known and usually cover general topics. Dogpatch Press was founded in 2012. Dog Patch actually started writing for Flera at around that same time. And he wrote a few articles for Flera. Interestingly, like some of his articles weren't really well received at Flare either. But he had some really good ones, and he had some really hit or miss ones. I too have had hits and misses. If you go to our histories and things like that, the one I recall was him like basically promoting a MC rapper or something or MC musician from his local area, and it really had not much to do with furry at all. And a lot of people called him out on it, going, "You're just promoting your friend, and like, what does this have to really do with furry?" And like, that was the first sort of like my that after that article and after the response and his response to the responses, I sort of got a good feeling for Patch's character, for who Patch is as a person. Um, he very much is a San Francisconian GLBT individual through and through. He is who he is. He's unapologetic for it, and that very cadence goes into his style. And literally, even though he says Dog Patch Press and he has like a bunch of dogs with papers on it, as if the dog itself was what inspired the name of his website, um, Dog Patch's etymology is actually um, Dogpatch is a segment of San Francisco. So, like, if you zoom into a map of San Francisco, there is literally a place called Dogpatch, which is basically in the downtown area. So, basically, like, you get what you get. So, that's why he is very much unapologetically GLBT and very much prone to if somebody has a problem with GLBT, he has a problem with them, right? So, and that's sort of his style, and it's led him to contention with certain subsets of furries who more don't or less don't wear that on their sleeve. And but he does good quality articles about club scenes. Very much good on the club scenes. Very much good about talking about other such topics. So he does write good quality stuff. Fred Patton used to write book reviews for Dogpatch Press before his unfortunate passing last year. Fred Patton also used to work for Flera before he moved out to Dogpatch and made that sort of his mainstay. Well, Fred Patton's sort of a West Coaster as well. I've noticed that like Flera is sort of international, but um, you know Flavor's got people from all over the place. Like I'm from the Northeast. Green Reaper's from the UK. I think Drawn is from Vancouver, or like I think East. I think it's Western Canada. Canada, I think. Um, you know, Growlithe sometimes writes articles, and he's from like Austria. He used to be from South Africa. And while we're talking about etymology, Flera is named after a carrot, like the name for that. It's a neologism from Watership Down describing carrots, which is why the subtitle is Furry Food for Thought, by the way, because Flera describes carrots as a food, right? And that's why the icon's a carrot as well. Just so you're aware of that. So that's sort of where the etymology of that comes from. It comes from Watership Down. Um, so we hit Dogpatch Press. Um, Another nonfiction one. These guys don't do writing technically, but they do write out their particular YouTube videos. Good nonfiction, but that their coverage is more on sort of anthropology. I think that's what it's called. Like sort of like deep furry history, talking about um, anthropomorphic characters in media throughout its history, and some historical things dealing with anthropomorphic creatures and human beings' interactions with such things, and the history of costuming going all the way back. Like early fandom stuff, pre-fandom stuff, etc. There is a good channel to watch, and they talk about culture things as well. Um, so that's always a good channel to check out. You can click up on the card above there. Also, links to the descriptions below to all these places, I think. So, that being said, we covered this one already, I do believe. But Good Fur News is now up and running, and we'll see how they do. And we kind of covered that a little bit earlier, so I won't go too much deep into it. So basically, they just came up around the block in early 2019. Culture Left, I think, came up at around 2014. And Dogpatch Press was 2012. The Rue that you're watching right now came up in 2015. So I forgot to promote myself. World in Review, yes, the channel that you're on right now. I've been on doing YouTube since 2015, and I cover usually current events, sort of in tandem with what I do at Flera. So that really covers really the bulk of people who do furry news things on that sort of segment. There's also blogs, like they're what I call super blogs, where people will cover news. And so an interesting thing here is Furry Times has been around for a bit. I've covered their sort of shenanigans here before. Very hit or miss. They have quantity over quality sometimes. They just kind of post whatever every day. I mean, that takes commitment for sure. He's very committed to his site, so because he posts things every day. But obviously the quality of what he posts isn't like something that might retain people's interest, and sometimes it might be considered spammy because sometimes he just posts a meme, and the meme doesn't really have anything to do with furry news or anything like that. But every once in a while he'll cover things. But unfortunately, he's very passionate. Sometimes he takes things a little personally, I think. It's particularly in his writing style. You can tell like he's saying things out loud that really should kind of be kept up here, and doesn't really have any stake in what's going on. So kind of injecting himself in the story a bit too much, I think, because you got to keep that distance. And that's sort of something that I'm going to cover on this channel a little bit more is sort of how to do it. And that's like there's going to be like I think there's going to be a small updated videos, a list of videos that will be done in tandem with my normal show, which will go over my process of how to write nonfiction and sort of and I'm going to use Flare as sort of the template because that's the platform I use, and anyone can actually use that platform. It's just that don't be shy. That's sort of one of my New Year's resolutions is to get more people writing nonfiction stories because I can't cover everything by myself. And the more it is, the better it is. And even if like somebody might not have any like a good, even if somebody flummoxes the style a little bit sometimes and takes things a bit too personally and gets a little bit upset, like people are usually able to kind of sift out that to be have your feet on the ground, have your eyes forward, and make sure that you're talking about things that are of the greatest good to more people than just trying to make yourself look good or worrying about looking bad or any of that. That's a very important thing. And unfortunately for this one here, which is Woo What's News, um, when Dogpatch got into that PK Russell um, debacle, one of Dogpatch's own writers got really upset when Dogpatch sort of backed off and sort of somewhat changed his positioning, or at least what appeared to be his stance on particular um, adult sort of items within the fandom or like age stuff. And so Dogpatch seemed to change his position to a lot less stringent of a stance. And of course, those that were in his particular thing that thought that they were fully on their side kind of diverged away. And that's sort of what happened with the Woo What's News. Um, they made a few articles. Um, they made a few false statements. One of the statements being that Ink Bunny was run by a convicted pedophile or a convicted individual who was child endangerment crimes or whatever, which is factually incorrect. And that's something that's like, yeah, some of the content on Ink Bunny is very despicable. Yeah, sure. What if you feel that way? Yes. Um, the issue is that when you make a false statement about the person who's running it based upon what the content is on the thing, or you make a false statement. Other people thought it was her confusing Ink Bunny with Ink Fur, or them confusing Ink Bunny with Ink Fur. I don't know what their acceptable pronoun is, but like they made a false statement, and they made a few of them, and then they took it personally, and then they kind of closed up shop and walked away. Which, if it's not for everybody. And by the way, like, it's not like I wasn't young and angry and vibrant once. One of the things you have to learn when doing this kind of stuff, as a very general rule, is you can't, you can't, you have to know your limits. Words are powerful things, but they have their limits. Words are powerful things, but they have their limits. If somebody wants to maintain a position they have or a world viewpoint they have, they can spin your words and their words in any way, shape, or form that they want to in order to maintain their position. If somebody has enough intelligence, they're going to do that. No matter what, no matter what it is. Even if it's like, oh, this is a clearly harmful behavior to themselves and to others, they'll spin it around in their head sometimes to just give comfort to themselves. And there's nothing you can do to change that. Instead, the best thing you can do is to educate other people, about how to kind of work around individuals that are harmful like that, and to know basically the institutions of power that they can utilize in order to better themselves and to better the world around them, in spite of other people's transgressions or selfishness or whatever. It's better to do that than to dwell upon trying to change everybody for the better, because you can't change everybody for the better. People can only change themselves. And maybe somebody's writing will inspire somebody to change themselves for the better. And that is the power. That's the real power of good journalism and good advice. Like he's basically, if someone comes away knowing more about the world around them, more how to interact with the world around them, more how to improve things. And by the way, a journalist is supposed to try to convey those complexities to other people. They're not going to know the depths and the crazy detail that goes into certain things. They have to learn how to communicate that with people who might not be experts. They have to take really advanced things and try to make it more um, readable to somebody who's, might not be quite at level 8 yet. Like if you're trying to convey science to somebody who's not a scientist, or you're trying to convey the process of art to somebody who's not an artist, of business to somebody who's not a business person. You're basically communicating to those and things, because a lot of people, when they see journalism, they see as somebody who bludgeons people in power. It's like they punch people in power. It's their job to punch them and punch them and punch the people in power until the people in power submit. But the reality is that the best people who do journalism are those who listen to the people in power, understand whether or not the people in power are trying to mislead them or mislead their people in order to gain political doings, but also understand if they actually are doing good things, or if they are trying to do things, explaining it to individuals better. Like the and also, like, if they go that, they can talk, to the common person and try to convey the common person's issues to the people in power as well. It's like, try to bridge that gap of understanding between person A and person B. um, as social media has sort of grown, um, people have more access to individuals directly. So, like, the journalist as sort of the middleman has sort of kind of ebbed away, which is why I think journalism is shrinking for the most part. An artist can talk to their fans and help them understand how to do things more directly, which, by the way, is why I think covering, like, how to do nonfiction is a very important thing, since, you know, like, I'm not going to be able to tell an artist how to draw. I'm not going to be able to tell, I'm not going to have the experience of what it's like to go into a dealer's den, or ones were related to furry directly. Like, it's furries doing furry blogs, like self-written one-man show furry blogs about furry news. But there are furries out there who do nonfiction that are not related to furry fandom. Like, for instance, Boozy Badger. He does his blog is more lawyer centric and more law centric, and he talks about eccentric laws, about eccentric things in the world. Like, it's sort of like Ripley's Believe It or Not sort of laws about very strange things that a lot of people might not talk about. Um, so, like, and basically that's how he found the fandom. Was he wrote one of his blogs just happened to correlate with the fandom, and the fandom really positively responded to, like, his article on sovereign citizens, and so that's sort of how, that sort of happened. I believe Tax Beast talks about bodybuilding and things like that. There's other, like, furries who have specializations, who cover topics that aren't necessarily related to furry, but it's their passions outside of the fandom, which can be very useful to those in the fandom. And so that's also pretty cool as well. Um, Other little furry blogs, Gaming Forever. I think this one's been around since about 2015, or maybe a little before then. I think it may be 2012. But this one's more specialized in furry games. And they haven't done too much written content, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of furry games out there that you can write reviews for. I write furry game reviews for Flayra sometimes. Rauken's sort of doing furry game reviews for Flayra. Um, you know, it might be in my best interest, for us, because it's sort of like, we do have a commons license on it. If we do, like, an affiliation with Gaming Forever, where, our the furry review game, the furry reviews that we do for furry games, are sort of pseudo hosted on their site as well. That might be something for me to do, and for me to talk with Green Reaper about, and talk with Yo Yo Joshua, who's the person who found that particular site. I think they do like streaming things more often. I think gaming itself has gone towards more of the YouTube and streaming and visual mediums provided by that. Kotaku, obviously, there's still the written form like Kotaku and Polygon and all those other things, but not like the furry one. They sort of did a few of them, but then they kind of backed off. So hopefully they'll start writing more written stuff again, and their site will be a lot more things. But oh, by the way, so this is this last little thing. I should have done this earlier. But interestingly enough, there was something when I was trying to find a picture for a Whoa What News, What's News, that super blog that kind of fell out of the wayside due to like, you know, her being them being questioned about their content. I found out that that person wasn't the first one to come up with OO News. That was this guy. So this guy posted a YouTube video, and he's got a nice little snazzy suit, and he's got a nice little news desk, and I'm jelly. I'm super jelly. He's already got up to 500 subscribers. I don't think he's been. Has he been on YouTube as long as I have? But he speaks Spanish, Espanol. He's a Spanish pup, and so I'm gonna link up to the card above there to the Espanol news. I don't know where they're from or anything like that, but it's kind of cool to see a furry newscaster speaking in Spanish, and seeing oh whoa, what's news. So congratulations to you, dog person, for coming up with that first. Man, riding the coattails. Here's the thing about creativity, though. Sometimes, and this is how I kind of describe it to people. When someone says, "Yo, you stole something from that other person," it's like, here's the thing: when a caveman first created fire, he might not have been the first one to do it. Because it's possible for multiple people to discover the same thing at different times. Okay, so to me, that's sort of like the creative process. It's like, oh, a red kangaroo with an orange tummy. Well, that can't be happening multiple times. Well, it can. It could. Like, it can happen multiple times. Like Vulpines named after fruit and strawberries. Like, I've seen like two or three of them. It's not just Majira strawberry, and they probably came up with it around the same time. It's not like one person took it from the other person, took it from the other person. Sometimes the start was just sort of a little foray into furry nonfiction, mostly covering written media on the things. There's a bunch of other things like podcasts and other things like that. We talked about feral attractions, which unfortunately had that issue, right? So, but there's also but there's ones that didn't have issues and are still going strong, that have been going strong for a long time, like Southpaw or XBN and their multiple different kind of podcast things, and all that stuff. So I mean, like that's kind of cool. Like, and so like I think that the more it grows, the better it gets. So be on the lookout for future videos about how to write articles at Flera. And knowing Green Reaper, he's going to be a jerk. He's maintained the Drupal thing since 2010, and as soon as I make video tutorials on how to write articles into that system, he's probably going to update the system on me, right? to common markup languages or something. But anyways, keep on the lookout for that. Those will be bonus videos. And thank you very much for watching. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. So do you write furry nonfiction? What do you like in the fandom? What content do you consume? Is there anything that you like that you find passion in the fandom that that you like to write about? And let me know about that in the description below. And thank you very much for watching again, and have a good one.